Welcome to Read in Minutes. Here's a short summary of the book, Silent Spring by Rachel Carson. If you enjoy it, then please hit the like button and don't forget to subscribe to our channel. Now let's get started. Published in 1962, Silent Spring by Rachel Carson is widely regarded as one of the most influential environmental books of all time. Carson, a marine biologist and writer, exposed the dangers of widespread pesticide use, particularly the synthetic chemicals developed after World War II. The book challenged the prevailing belief that human ingenuity could dominate nature without consequences. By carefully documenting scientific evidence and weaving it into a compelling narrative, Carson made a case against the reckless application of pesticides and their devastating impact on ecosystems, wildlife, and human health. At the heart of Silent Spring is a warning. If humans continue poisoning the environment at the current rate, the consequences will be catastrophic. The book's title alludes to a future where birds and insects have vanished, leaving behind a lifeless, silent world. Carson's message sparked public outrage, led to policy changes, and is credited with inspiring the modern environmental movement. Carson begins Silent Spring with a haunting allegory, a seemingly idyllic American town where all life is mysteriously disappearing. Birds no longer sing, bees have vanished, livestock are falling sick, and even children suffer from unexplained illnesses. The once thriving landscape is now silent and lifeless. Although this town is fictional, Carson makes it clear that such a scenario is not far-fetched. She explains that real communities across the United States were already experiencing similar ecological collapses due to the widespread use of pesticides. This opening chapter sets the tone for the rest of the book, serving as both a warning and a call to action. Carson then delves into the history of chemical pesticides, particularly their rapid development following World War II. Before the war, pest control relied on natural methods, but scientists soon discovered that synthetic chemicals could be used to kill insects and weeds on a massive scale. Among the most widely used was DDT, dichlorodiphenyltrichloroethane, a chemical that had been instrumental in controlling diseases like malaria and typhus during the war. After the war, chemical companies promoted DDT and other synthetic pesticides as miracle solutions for agriculture, public health, and household use. Governments and farmers eagerly adopted these chemicals, believing they were completely safe. However, as Carson explains, little thought was given to their long-term effects on the environment and human health. Carson exposes how the chemical industry, backed by government agencies, misled the public into believing pesticides were harmless. Through aggressive marketing campaigns, they assured consumers that these chemicals only affected pests, ignoring growing scientific evidence to the contrary. One of the central themes of Silent Spring is the idea that nature is an intricate, interconnected web. Every organism, from tiny insects to large mammals, plays a role in maintaining ecological balance. Carson explains that when humans introduce powerful chemicals into this delicate system, the consequences ripple far beyond their intended targets. For example, pesticides sprayed on crops don't just kill harmful insects. They also eliminate beneficial ones, such as bees and butterflies, which are crucial for pollination. Birds that eat poisoned insects suffer from toxic exposure, leading to population declines. Fish die as pesticides seep into rivers and lakes. Over time, these chemicals accumulate in the food chain, affecting even humans who consume contaminated food and water. Carson provides multiple case studies to illustrate this point. One of the most alarming examples is a mass bird die-off in Clear Lake, California, where authorities sprayed DDT to control gnats. While the gnats were temporarily reduced, the pesticide poisoned fish in the lake. Birds that fed on these fish accumulated high levels of toxins in their bodies, leading to their deaths. This cycle of unintended consequences repeats itself in many instances throughout the book. Carson devotes significant attention to the devastating impact of DDT on wildlife, particularly birds. She explains that birds exposed to DDT lay eggs with extremely thin shells, causing them to break before hatching. This phenomenon led to dramatic declines in the populations of several bird species, including the bald eagle, peregrine falcon, and brown pelican. She highlights research showing that DDT does not break down easily in the environment. Instead, it persists for years, accumulating in the fat tissues of animals as it moves up the food chain. This process, known as biomagnification, means that predators at the top of the food chain, such as birds of prey and even humans, end up with dangerously high concentrations of toxic chemicals in their bodies. Carson's warnings about DDT were instrumental in the eventual banning of the pesticide in the United States in 1972. While much of Silent Spring focuses on wildlife, Carson also makes a compelling case that pesticides pose serious risks to human health. She describes multiple cases of farm workers, scientists, and even children who suffered from pesticide poisoning. Symptoms range from nausea and dizziness to long-term effects like cancer, genetic mutations, and neurological disorders. One of Carson's most alarming points is that the public is unknowingly consuming these chemicals every day. Pesticide residues are found in food, water, and even breast milk. Despite mounting scientific evidence of harm, government agencies failed to regulate pesticide use adequately. Carson criticizes the chemical industry's influence over public policy, accusing it of downplaying risks and suppressing scientific research. She calls for stricter regulations, better testing, and greater transparency to protect public health. A key argument in Silent Spring is that pesticides are not as effective as they are claimed to be. Carson explains that over time, insects develop resistance to chemical treatments, requiring stronger and more frequent applications. This creates a vicious cycle in which new, more toxic pesticides are continually introduced. Additionally, pesticides often kill natural predators that help keep pest populations in check. As a result, once a pesticide loses its effectiveness, the pest problem becomes worse than before. Carson argues that this approach to pest control is not only dangerous but also unsustainable. Unlike some critics of Silent Spring, Carson was not opposed to all forms of pest control. Instead, she advocated for biological control methods that work with nature rather than against it. These methods include introducing natural predators to control pest populations, crop rotation to prevent the spread of pests, using resistant plant varieties, applying organic solutions instead of synthetic chemicals. Carson emphasizes that humans must learn to respect and understand natural ecosystems rather than recklessly altering them with toxic substances. Following the publication of Silent Spring, Carson faced intense criticism from the chemical industry. Corporations attempted to discredit her work, accusing her of being anti-science and alarmist. Despite these attacks, her research held up under scrutiny. Her book led to congressional hearings on pesticide regulation, ultimately resulting in the creation of the Environmental Protection Agency, EPA, in 1970 and the banning of DDT in the United States in 1972. Today, Silent Spring remains a foundational text in environmental science and policy. Carson's work paved the way for future environmental legislation, including the Clean Air Act, Clean Water Act, and Endangered Species Act. In her closing chapters, Carson urges society to reconsider its relationship with nature. She warns that if humans continue poisoning the earth, they will ultimately poison themselves. She calls for responsible stewardship, scientific integrity, and a shift toward sustainable practices. Even more than 60 years after its publication, Silent Spring remains a powerful reminder that human actions have profound consequences. Carson's work continues to inspire activists, scientists, and policymakers, proving that a single voice can spark a movement capable of changing the world.